Orc Queen offered half her kingdom to a poor human, if he married her. Some offers are so generous they feel like traps, and some traps are so generous they feel like salvation. This is a story about the kind of choice that ruins you either way, the kind where saying yes destroys you, and saying no destroys everyone you love. Ewan had carpenter's hands, the kind of hands that knew exactly how much pressure it took to shape wood without breaking it, how to find the grain and work with it instead of against it. Those same hands now held a piece of parchment that felt heavier than any timber he'd ever carried. The royal seal was still warm. He could smell the wax, beeswax mixed with something else, something that reminded him of forests after rain and smoke from ceremonial fires. Orc kingdoms didn't use the same perfumes human courts did. Their seals smelled like war and earth and things that refused to apologize for existing. "Read it again," Tessa said. Her voice had that quality it got when she was trying very hard to sound calm, like glass pretending to be stone. Ewan didn't need to read it again. He'd memorized every word the first time, but he read it anyway, because not reading it meant talking about it, and talking about it meant making it real. To Ewan of Millbrook Village, you are hereby summoned to the palace of Queen Vashara, ruler of the northern reaches, keeper of the blood oath, first blade of the green plains. Your presence is requested at sunset 3 days hence. The matter concerns a proposal of matrimony and territorial division. Failure to appear will be considered an act of war against the crown. Signed in blood and witnessed by the Council of Tusks. The last sentence was the one that made his stomach turn. Failure to appear will be considered an act of war. They hadn't asked him to come. They'd commanded him, and when an orc queen commanded, entire villages disappeared for refusing. "Why you?" Tessa asked. It was the 4th time she'd asked. Ewan still didn't have an answer that made sense. He was nobody. A carpenter in a village so small, it didn't appear on most maps. He fixed wagon wheels and built coffins and once carved a chess set for Father Lawrence that the old priest still bragged about. He wasn't handsome in any remarkable way. Average height, brown hair that never did what he wanted, shoulders strong from work, but nothing that would make anyone look twice. "I don't know," he said. Samuel was sitting in the corner, playing with his collection of stones. He'd named them all. The boy had a rock called Thunder that was just gray granite, and another called Dragon's Eye that was literally a pebble. He was humming to himself, completely unaware that his father had just been given an invitation to destroy their entire lives. The bracelet on Tessa's wrist caught the lamplight. Simple oak, carved in an interlocking pattern that had taken Ewan 3 months to perfect, 2 strands becoming one. He'd made it for their wedding 7 years ago, when they'd gotten married in Father Lawrence's church with exactly 9 people in attendance. Tessa never took it off. Not when she washed clothes in the river. Not when she sewed until her fingers bled. Not ever. "We run," she said suddenly. "We take Samuel and we disappear. There are places, forests, other kingdoms. She'd find us." Ewan's voice was flat. "You read the seal. Act of war. That means she'd burn every village between here and wherever we ran until someone gave us up. How many people died because I was too much of a coward to show up?" Tessa's jaw tightened. "Don't you dare. Don't you dare make this about courage. This is about our family. About Samuel. About—" her voice cracked. "About us." The silence that followed had weight. The kind of silence that happens when 2 people realize they're standing on opposite sides of a chasm and neither of them knows how to build a bridge. "Maybe," Ewan said slowly. "Maybe she just wants to talk. Maybe it's a mistake. Maybe—" "Ewan." Tessa's voice was sharp enough to cut. "Queens don't make mistakes. Especially not orc queens. Especially not ones who sign letters in blood." She was right. She was always right about these things. Tessa had an instinct for danger that Ewan lacked. Probably because she'd grown up poor enough to know that danger didn't announce itself. It just showed up and took things. 3 days. He had 3 days to figure out what to say to a queen who could have him executed for breathing wrong. 3 days to understand why an orc ruler who commanded armies and controlled more wealth than Ewan could imagine would summon a random carpenter from a village nobody cared about. "I'll go," he said. "I'll hear what she wants, and then I'll come home." Tessa looked at him for a long moment. Her eyes were the color of honey and sunlight, and right now they were filled with something Ewan couldn't quite name. Fear, yes, but also something else, something that looked like grief. "Promise me," she whispered. "I promise." It was the kind of promise people make when they both know it might be a lie, but saying it out loud makes them feel better anyway. The kind of promise that tastes like ash even as you're speaking it. Samuel looked up from his stones. "Papa, are you going somewhere?" Ewan knelt down, eye level with his son. The boy had Tessa's eyes and Ewan's stubborn chin. At 5 years old, he already had opinions about everything, and the confidence of someone who'd never learned the world could hurt you. "Just a short trip," Ewan said. "I'll be back before you know it. Can I come?" "Not this time, little man. Will you bring me a present?" The question was so innocent, so perfectly childlike, that Ewan felt something crack inside his chest. "Yeah," he managed. "I'll bring you a present." That night, Ewan couldn't sleep. He lay next to Tessa, listening to her breathe, memorizing the sound. She was pretending to be asleep. He could tell by the way she held herself too still, by the rhythm of her breath that was just slightly too controlled. "I love you," he whispered into the darkness. She didn't answer, but her hand found his under the blanket and squeezed once. Hard enough to hurt, hard enough to remember. The palace of Queen Vashara sat on the northern edge of the kingdom like a dare. It wasn't beautiful in the way human castles were beautiful. All delicate spires and stained glass and things that looked like they'd shatter if you breathed on them too hard. This was orc architecture. Massive stone walls thick enough to withstand siege weapons. Towers that looked more like fists punching toward the sky. Gates made of iron and studded with tusks from creatures Ewan didn't want to think about. 2 guards stood at the entrance. They were both orcs, both female, both carrying weapons that looked like they could split a horse in half. They didn't stop Ewan. They just watched him walk past with the kind of expression you'd give a bug that wandered into your house, more curious than concerned. The throne room was the size of Ewan's entire village, maybe bigger. The ceiling disappeared into shadows, supported by columns carved with battle scenes he really didn't want to examine too closely. Banners hung from the walls, each one representing a different clan or victory or something Ewan's human education hadn't prepared him to understand. And there, at the far end of the room, sitting on a throne that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of black stone, was Queen Vashara. She wasn't what Ewan expected. He'd pictured someone massive, 7 feet tall, covered in battle scars, tusks like daggers, muscles that could bend steel, the kind of orc that appeared in the scary stories human mothers told their children to make them behave. Queen Vashara was 5'9". She had green skin the color of moss after rain, black hair that fell past her shoulders in waves, and she wore armor that was both functional and somehow elegant, gold-chased steel that fit her like it had been grown rather than forged. Her tusks were small, almost delicate, curving up from her lower jaw like ivory commas. She was, in a word that Ewan's brain absolutely did not want to acknowledge, beautiful. "Ewan of Millbrook," she said. Her voice was deeper than Tessa's, with an accent that turned the vowels into something musical. "You came. You didn't really give me a choice, Your Majesty." One of the guards tensed. Apparently humans weren't supposed to be sarcastic to queens, but Vashara smiled. It was the kind of smile that suggested she'd expected exactly this response, and was pleased to be proven right. "Walk with me," she said, rising from the throne. This was not how royal audiences worked in any of the stories, but Ewan was quickly learning that orc queens didn't particularly care about human expectations. They walked through corridors wide enough to march armies through, past rooms filled with weapons and trophies and things that looked valuable enough to buy Ewan's village 10 times over. Vashara didn't speak. She just walked, her armor making small sounds with each step, metal on metal, a rhythm like a heartbeat. Finally, they reached a balcony that overlooked the kingdom. From here, Ewan could see forests and mountains and rivers that sparkled in the fading sunlight. It was the kind of view that made you realize how small you were, how vast the world could be. "I lost my husband 2 years ago," Vashara said abruptly. "In battle. He was the best warrior I ever knew, brave, honorable. Stupid enough to charge into a trap because he thought it was the right thing to do." Ewan didn't know what to say to that. "I'm sorry," felt inadequate, so he said nothing. "The council wants me to remarry," she continued. "For political reasons, for alliances, for heirs." She said the word heirs like it tasted bad. "They've paraded every eligible orc warrior from here to the eastern mountains in front of me. Generals, champions, males who've killed more enemies than you've met people in your entire life. And you said no." I said no. She turned to look at him directly. Her eyes were amber, catching the light like gemstones. "Because I realized I don't want another warrior. I don't want someone who sees marriage as a tactical advantage. I don't want a throne room alliance that will fall apart the moment it becomes inconvenient. What do you want? Something real. The words came out quiet, almost vulnerable. I want what you have. Ewan blinked. What I have. You're married, yes? To a woman named Tessa. You have a son named Samuel. The fact that she knew their names sent ice through Ewan's veins. How do you... I pay attention. Bashara's smile was sad now. I sent scouts. Not to spy, just to... Look, I wanted to see what a real family looked like. What a real marriage looked like. And yours... She stopped, searching for words. You built her a house. With your own hands. It's small. The roof leaks when it rains too hard. But you built it together. You laugh with your son. You kiss your wife goodbye like it matters. Every single time. You're poor, but you're happy. And you want to take that from me? The words came out harsher than Ewan intended. No. Bashara met his eyes. I want to give you something that will make you unhappy. Which is why I'm going to be completely honest with you, Ewan of Millbrook, in a way that queens are never supposed to be honest. She took a breath. I need a human consort. For peace. There's a treaty that requires it. A symbolic union between our kingdoms. The council will only approve it if it's someone unremarkable. Someone who won't challenge me politically. Someone who needs what I can offer enough that they won't cause trouble. Her jaw tightened. Someone expendable, in their eyes. And that's me. That's you. She didn't apologize for it. But here's what the council doesn't know. Here's what makes this complicated. I don't just need a consort. I want a family. I want children who will grow up knowing what love looks like. Not just duty. I want... She stopped again. When she spoke next, her voice was barely above a whisper. I want what you already have, and I'm willing to share it. Ewan's head was spinning. Share it? Half the kingdom, half my wealth, half my power. Bring your wife, bring your son. I'm not asking you to leave them. I'm asking you to expand what you have. She turned fully toward him now, and there was something desperate in her eyes. I know it's insane. I know it violates every rule human society has about marriage. But orc culture is different. We've always valued strength in numbers, multiple bonds, extended families. You're asking me to be married to 2 women. I'm asking you to give your family a future where your son doesn't starve when the crops fail, where your wife doesn't work her fingers raw just to survive, where you have a choice, where everyone has a choice. Bashara's voice was steady now. And yes, I'm asking you to be married to 2 women, to have children with both of us, to build something new, something that shouldn't work but might anyway. The silence that followed was broken only by the wind. And if I say no, Ewan asked, then I'll find someone else. The treaty demands it, but it won't be this. It won't be real. It'll be another political arrangement that slowly kills everyone involved. She paused. And you'll go back to your village. And you'll watch your wife work herself to death. And you'll teach your son to be a carpenter because it's the only future you can give him. And you'll wonder, every single day, what if? She was right. She was absolutely, devastatingly right. And Ewan hated her for it. I need to talk to my wife, he said. Of course. Bashara nodded. You have 1 week. After that, I need an answer. The council won't wait longer than that. Ewan turned to leave. He made it 3 steps before Bashara's voice stopped him. Ewan. He looked back. I'm not trying to steal your life. I'm trying to give you a different one. Whether that's better or worse? She shrugged, a gesture that was surprisingly human. That's not for me to decide. That's for you and Tessa to figure out together. Nah. On the ride back to the village took 6 hours. Ewan barely noticed. His mind was a storm of thoughts that refused to organize themselves into anything coherent. Tessa was waiting when he arrived. She took one look at his face and knew. She wants to marry you. Yes. And you're considering it. It's complicated. It's not complicated, Ewan. She wants you to leave. She wants us to come with me. All of us. You, Samuel, everyone. Tessa froze. What? She's offering half the kingdom. Wealth, safety, a future for Samuel. But she wants... The words stuck in his throat. She wants a family, a real one. She wants both of us. She wants me to be married to both of you. The look on Tessa's face was something Ewan would remember for the rest of his life. Shock, anger, confusion. And underneath all of it, something that looked like hope trying desperately not to exist. That's insane, she said. I know. That's not how marriage works. That's not how anything works. I know. She's asking you to... Tessa's voice broke. She's asking you to love someone else. She's asking me to give our son a life where he doesn't go hungry. where he can be anything he wants instead of being limited to what we can afford to teach him. Don't. Tessa's eyes were blazing now. Don't you dare use Samuel as an excuse. If you want to do this, if you want to marry a queen and live in a palace and have everything we could never give you, then own it. But don't hide behind our son. She was right. Again. Always right when it mattered most. I don't want to do this, Ewan said quietly. I want to stay here. I want our life exactly as it is. But she's right about one thing, Tessa. We're one bad harvest away from losing everything. We're one illness away from burying Samuel in the churchyard. We're barely surviving, and we both know it. So we suffer together. That's what love is. That's what marriage is. What if it doesn't have to be? The question hung between them like smoke. Tessa turned away. When she spoke again, her voice was so soft Ewan almost didn't hear it. If you do this, if we do this, I need you to promise me something. Anything. Don't fall in love with her. It was such an impossible request that Ewan almost laughed. Almost. Because the pain in Tessa's voice made laughter impossible. I love you, he said. That won't change. People say that. And then it does. Tessa wiped her eyes. But we're talking about this wrong. We're talking like it's your decision. It's not. What do you mean? She turned back to face him. It's my decision too. She's asking me to share you. She's asking me to live in her palace, raise our children alongside hers, be part of something that might destroy me. So this isn't about what you want, Ewan. It's about what I can survive. And can you? Tessa looked at the bracelet on her wrist. The simple wooden band that represented everything they'd built together. Everything they were. I don't know, she whispered, but I think we should find out. The wedding happened 3 weeks later. It wasn't like any wedding anyone in the village had ever seen. Father Lawrence refused to perform it, called it an abomination against God and nature and several other things Ewan stopped listening to halfway through the rant. So it was an orc ceremony instead, held in the palace courtyard, witnessed by the Council of Tusks and exactly 3 humans, Tessa, Samuel, and an elderly woman named Rogsha, who served as Vashara's chief advisor. Rogsha was the type of orc who said exactly what she thought without any consideration for whether it would offend you. Ewan liked her immediately. You're shorter than I expected, she told him. You're taller than I expected, he replied. Good. If you'd been weak, I would have told the queen to reconsider. But you've got spine. That'll help when things get difficult. And they will get difficult. Thank you for the reassurance. I don't reassure. I prepare. Rogsha's grin showed all her tusks. But I like you. You'll do. The ceremony itself involved blood, fire, and words in a language Ewan didn't understand. Vashara wore ceremonial armor. Ewan wore clothes that had been made for him specifically, fine enough to be appropriate, simple enough to make it clear he wasn't trying to be something he wasn't. Tessa stood next to him, silent, present. When Vashara took Ewan's hand to complete the ceremony, Tessa didn't look away. She watched every moment, witnessed every word, made herself part of it even though her heart was breaking. That night there was supposed to be a feast, but Vashara called it off. Go to your wife, she told Ewan. Your human wife. She needs you more than I do tonight. So he did. He found Tessa in the room they'd been given. It was 10 times larger than their house in the village. The bed alone was worth more than everything they'd owned. Samuel was already asleep, curled up in a corner with his collection of stones. Tessa was standing by the window, looking out at the city. She didn't turn when Ewan entered. I married a queen today, he said softly, and all I could think about was you. Don't. Tessa, I said don't. Her voice was sharp. Don't try to make this easier. Don't try to make me feel better. I chose this. We both chose this, but don't expect me to be happy about it. Ewan crossed the room, stood behind her. Carefully, slowly, he wrapped his arms around her waist. She tensed, almost pulled away, but then she leaned back into him, just slightly, and that small gesture broke something in Ewan's chest. I'm scared, she whispered. Me too. What if she's better than me? What if you— Stop. Ewan turned her to face him. Listen to me. Really listen. You are the mother of my child. You are the woman who chose to marry a poor carpenter with nothing to offer but calloused hands and bad jokes. You are the person who makes me want to be better than I am. That doesn't change because I signed a treaty. You didn't sign a treaty. You married another woman. I did. There was no point lying about it. But that doesn't unmake us. It just makes everything more complicated. Tessa laughed. It was a broken sound, But it was real. Complicated. That's one word for it. They stood there for a long moment. Two people trying to figure out how to be married in a way that had never been done before. Two people scared of losing each other while being forced to share. "I can't promise this won't hurt," Ewan said. "I can't promise I won't make mistakes. But I can promise that when I look at you, I still see the girl who agreed to marry a nobody. And I still can't believe you said yes." Tessa touched the wooden bracelet on her wrist. "Ask me tomorrow. See if I still think it was a good idea." It was the closest thing to a joke she'd managed all day. Ewan took it as a victory. The first month was a special kind of hell. Ewan spent half his time trying to learn how to be a consort, which involved politics and etiquette and remembering which fork to use for which course. The other half he spent trying to maintain some semblance of his old life. He still worked with wood. Set up a small workshop in one of the palace's unused rooms. It was the only place that felt real. Tessa avoided Vashara as much as possible. She'd smile politely when they crossed paths in hallways. She'd nod during council meetings. But she made it absolutely clear that she was there for Samuel and Ewan, not for any friendship with an orc queen who'd turned their lives upside down. Vashara, for her part, gave them space. She didn't push, didn't demand attention, just existed in the background, ruling her kingdom and occasionally checking in to make sure Ewan and Tessa had everything they needed. It was Rogshaw who finally broke the stalemate. She found Tessa in the garden one afternoon. Tessa was sewing. Old habit. The kind of thing you did with your hands when your mind needed to be anywhere else. "You're making everyone miserable," Rogshaw said bluntly, "including yourself. I didn't ask for your opinion." "Good thing I'm giving it for free then." Rogshaw sat down uninvited. "The queen is in love with your husband." Tessa's hands stilled. "Excuse me?" "She's in love with him. Has been since the day she saw him playing with your son. Saw the way he smiled, the way he loved without hesitation, the way he was everything she'd never had." Rogshaw's voice was matter of fact, "And it's killing her that you hate her for it." "I don't hate her. You do, and you have every right to. But here's the thing, human. She didn't steal him. She asked, and you said yes. So, if you're going to be miserable, at least be miserable honestly. Stop pretending this is something being done to you. You chose this. I chose it for Samuel. You chose it because part of you wanted it too." Rogshaw leaned forward. "You wanted your son to have a future. You wanted to stop being afraid of winter. You wanted your husband to stop working himself to death just to keep you all fed. Those aren't bad things. They're human things. And the fact that getting them cost you something doesn't make you weak. It makes you smart." Tessa's eyes were burning. "She has everything. I have scraps. She has a kingdom. You have his heart." Rogshaw stood. "Figure out which one of those is actually worth more. And when you do, maybe try talking to her. She's not your enemy. She's just someone who wants the same thing you do." "What's that?" "A family." Rogshaw walked away, leaving Tessa alone with thoughts that refused to be ignored. That night, Tessa did something she'd been avoiding for weeks. She knocked on Vashara's door. The queen answered immediately. She looked surprised. "Tessa, is everything—" "Can we talk?" The words came out rougher than intended. "Of course. Come in." Vashara's chambers were exactly what you'd expect from a warrior queen. Weapons on the walls, maps on tables, armor standing in corners like silent guards. But there were also softer touches. Books. A half-finished embroidery project that looked like it depicted a forest. A collection of small wooden carvings that looked suspiciously like Ewan's work. "Did he make those?" Tessa asked, pointing. "I asked him to teach me. I'm terrible at it. But he's patient." Vashara smiled slightly. "He talks about you while we work. About how you used to trade him baked bread for wooden spoons. About how you taught Samuel to count using buttons. About—" She stopped. "I'm sorry. You didn't come here to listen to me talk about your husband." "Actually," Tessa said slowly, "maybe I did." They sat. The silence that followed was awkward. But it was the kind of awkward that happens when two people are trying very hard not to hurt each other. "I need to know something," Tessa said finally. "Do you love him?" Vashara's answer was immediate. "Yes." Tessa had expected it. Somehow hearing it out loud still hurt. "Does he know?" "No. And I won't tell him unless you give me permission." Vashara's voice was steady. "This arrangement only works if you're comfortable. If you're not, if this is killing you, then we stop. I'll find another way to satisfy the treaty. I won't destroy your marriage to preserve mine." "You'd do that? Give up everything?" "I've lost one husband already. I know what it feels like to watch love die." Vashara's eyes were distant. I won't do that to you. I won't do that to him. Tessa looked at this orc queen, this woman who had everything and nothing at the same time. And for the first time, she saw past the crown and the armor and the power. She saw someone who was just as lost as she was. I don't know if I can share him, Tessa admitted. I don't know if I'm that strong. Then don't. Vashara's voice was gentle. Don't share him. Just coexist. Be his wife. Let me be his consort. We don't have to be friends. We don't have to pretend this is normal. We just have to survive it. What if surviving isn't enough? Then we'll figure something else out. Vashara reached across the space between them. Carefully, slowly, extended her hand. But we figure it out together. Not as rivals. As people trying to make an impossible situation possible. Tessa looked at that offered hand. Green skin. Claws where human fingernails would be. The hand of someone from a completely different world. She took it. The handshake was brief, but it was real, and it was a start. And things didn't magically get better after that. But they got different. Less hostile, more functional. Tessa started joining Vashara for morning walks through the palace gardens. They didn't talk much, just walked, existed in the same space without actively hating each other. It was progress. Yuan continued being pulled in two directions, but he learned to navigate it. Spent mornings with Vashara handling kingdom business. Spent afternoons with Tessa and Samuel. Spent evenings trying to be present for whoever needed him most. Samuel, bless him, adapted like only children can. He called Vashara Queen Lady, which made Ragsha laugh every single time. He'd started learning orc traditions alongside human ones. Would switch between languages mid-sentence without noticing. Collected stories about both cultures like he collected his stones. 6 months in, Tessa discovered she was pregnant. She told Yuan first. His joy was so pure, so uncomplicated, that it made her cry. Then she told Vashara, because hiding it felt wrong. Vashara's reaction was unexpected. She hugged Tessa, just pulled her into an embrace that was surprisingly gentle for someone who wore armor daily. Congratulations, she said, and meant it. I thought you'd be... Tessa didn't finish the sentence. Jealous? Vashara smiled sadly. I am, but I'm also happy for you. Those can both be true. 3 months after that, Vashara announced she was pregnant too. The palace erupted in celebration. The council was thrilled. An heir, continuation of the line, political stability, everything they'd wanted. Yuan's reaction was more complicated. Pride, fear, guilt, joy. All of it tangled together in a knot he couldn't unravel. That night, he sat with both women. Tessa on one side, Vashara on the other. 3 people who'd somehow ended up in a situation none of them fully understood, but were all trying to make work anyway. This is insane, Tessa said. Completely, Vashara agreed. We're going to have 2 babies, at the same time. Technically 3 children total, Yuan pointed out. Samuel's still here. Samuel doesn't count. He's old enough to walk and talk and not need us every 5 minutes. You clearly haven't met our son, Yuan said dryly. All 3 of them laughed. It was the first time they'd laughed together. Really laughed. Not polite chuckles at formal dinners. Not forced cheerfulness for appearances. Just genuine, spontaneous laughter at the absurdity of their situation. We should have a system, Vashara said. For when the babies come, take turns, support each other. Support each other. Tessa repeated the words like she was testing them. When did that become an option? When you decided not to hate me anymore. I never said I stopped hating you. You're holding my hand right now. Tessa looked down. She was, in fact, holding Vashara's hand. Had been for the past several minutes without realizing it. She started to pull away, then stopped. This is weird, she said. Very weird, Vashara agreed. But maybe weird is okay. Maybe. Yuan watched the 2 most important women in his life figure out how to be in each other's orbit without destroying each other. Watched them build something that didn't have a name. Watched them become, against all odds, friends. The babies were born 2 weeks apart. Leora came first. Human. Tiny. Perfect. She had Tessa's nose and Yuan's stubborn expression. Screamed loud enough to wake the entire palace. Tessa held her and cried and refused to let anyone else touch her for the first 6 hours. Zareth came second. Orc. Even tinier than Leora, which seemed impossible. She had Vashara's green skin and Yuan's brown eyes. Slept through her own birth like it was an inconvenience she'd rather ignore. Vashara held her and looked more terrified than Yuan had ever seen her look in battle. I don't know how to do this, Vishara admitted. Neither do I, Tessa said from across the room. We'll figure it out together. And they did. The first year was chaos. Beautiful, exhausting chaos. 2 newborns requiring constant attention. Samuel convinced he was being replaced and acting out accordingly. Ewan barely sleeping. Both women learning how to co-parent in a way that didn't result in murder. There were hard moments. Vishara holding Leora while Tessa fed Zareth, and both of them feeling the sting of separation. That these weren't fully their children anymore, but something shared. Ewan torn between 2 families that should have been separate, but had somehow merged into one complicated unit. But there were good moments too. Samuel teaching Leora to stack blocks while Zareth watched with solemn attention. Tessa braiding Vishara's hair because you can't go to council meetings looking like you fought a windstorm. Vishara teaching Tessa orc lullabies that made both babies stop crying immediately. Ewan carving a new set of wooden bracelets, 3 this time, identical, and presenting them during dinner. What are these? Tessa asked. A reminder, Ewan said, that we're all in this together, 3 strands, 1 family. Vishara put hers on immediately. Tessa hesitated, then slowly removed her old bracelet, the one Ewan had made 7 years ago, and replaced it with the new one. Does this mean we're actually doing this? She asked. Actually making this work? I think we already are, Vishara said. 5 years passed. Samuel was 10 now, fluent in both languages, training with the Royal Guard in the mornings, studying carpentry with his father in the afternoons. He'd stopped collecting rocks and started collecting stories instead. Would sit for hours listening to Ragshaw tell tales about old battles and forgotten heroes. Leora was 4, stubborn as hell, had Tessa's talent for sewing and Ewan's complete disregard for authority. Once told a visiting dignitary that his hat looked stupid and refused to apologize even when threatened with no dessert for a week. Tessa tried to scold her. Tried. Couldn't quite keep the pride out of her voice. Zareth was 4 as well. Quiet where Leora was loud. Thoughtful where Leora charged ahead. Had Vishara's strategic mind and Ewan's gentle hands. Loved books and learning and asking questions that made adults uncomfortable. The 3 children were inseparable, fought constantly, loved fiercely, protected each other with the kind of loyalty that made the entire court nervous, because nobody knew what these half-human, half-orc alliances would mean for the future. Tessa and Vashara had stopped being rivals years ago. Now they were just partners. In parenting, in running the household, in supporting Ewan when kingdom business threatened to crush him. They had their own routines, their own inside jokes, their own friendship that existed independent of him. I think they like each other more than they like me, Ewan told Ragshaw one day. Of course they do. You're just the man who brought them together. They're the ones who chose to stay. Ragshaw grinned. Besides, you're not that interesting. Good with wood. Decent father. Mediocre jokes. They could do better. Thank you for your honesty. Always. That night, the entire family gathered for dinner. Ewan looked around the table. Samuel arguing with Leora about whether dragons were real. Zareth quietly stealing food from both their plates while they were distracted. Tessa and Vishara having a conversation about crop rotations that somehow turned into laughter. 3 wooden bracelets on 3 wrists. This wasn't the life he'd imagined when he'd received that letter from the Queen. This wasn't the future he'd dreamed of when he married Tessa in a tiny church with 9 witnesses. But it was real, and it was his, and it was enough. Almost. Because sometimes, late at night, Ewan would wake up and feel the weight of choices he'd made. Would wonder if Tessa still resented him for bringing Vishara into their lives. Would wonder if Vishara felt like second choice. Would wonder if his children would grow up confused about identity and belonging and where they fit. He shared these thoughts with Tessa once. She listened, then said something that stuck with him. Stop waiting for this to fall apart. Stop looking for the cracks. We're not perfect. We're never going to be perfect. But we're here. We're trying. That has to count for something. She was right. Again. Always. 5 years after that initial letter. 5 years after an impossible offer changed everything. Ewan stood on the same balcony where Vishara had first proposed. The kingdom stretched out before him. Forests and mountains and rivers. 2 cultures learning to coexist. Peace that had held longer than anyone expected. Thinking, Vishara's voice came from behind him. Always. She joined him. They stood in comfortable silence. The kind of silence that happens between people who've been through enough together that words become optional. Do you regret it? she asked. Sometimes. Ewan was honest. Always honest with her. I think about the simple life Tessa and I could have had. Just us. Just Samuel. No complications. Would you change it? He thought about Leora's laugh. About Zareth's questions. About the way Tessa and Vashara had built something neither of them expected. About the family that shouldn't exist, but did anyway. No, he said finally. I wouldn't change it. Even though it hurt. Especially because it hurt. Easy things don't change you. Hard things do. Vashara smiled. You've gotten philosophical in your old age. I'm 33. That's not old. For a human, you're practically ancient. I'm going to tell Ragsha you said that. She'd agree with me. They laughed. Partners in crime, partners in chaos, partners in building something that had no blueprint but somehow stayed standing anyway. Inside, Ewan could hear his family. Tessa calling the children for dinner. Samuel and Leora arguing. Zareth trying to mediate. Normal sounds. Everyday sounds. The sounds of a life that was messy and complicated and absolutely, completely worth it. Thank you, Vashara said softly. For what? For saying yes. For taking a chance on something impossible. For giving me this. She gestured toward the sounds of dinner chaos. I had a kingdom before you, but I didn't have a home. Ewan took her hand. Squeezed once. We gave each other something. That's how this works. They went inside together. To a table filled with food and noise and children who didn't care about species or tradition, or whether their family looked like anyone else's. To Tessa, who looked up and smiled at both of them. Real smile, earned smile, smile that said we made it through. Was it perfect? No. Were there still hard days? Absolutely. Days when jealousy flared. Days when Ewan felt guilty for loving two women. Days when the children asked questions nobody had good answers for. Days when the weight of being a bridge between two worlds felt too heavy to carry. But there were also good days. Days when everyone laughed together. Days when the children played without noticing their differences. Days when Tessa and Vashara ganged up on Ewan about something stupid, and he loved them both for it. Days when the family they'd built felt less like an accident, and more like a choice they'd keep making every single morning. That night, after the children were asleep, the three adults sat together in the room that had become their shared space. Ewan in the middle, Tessa on one side, Vashara on the other. Remember when I said I couldn't share you? Tessa asked. I remember everything you've ever said. Ewan replied. Liar. You forgot my birthday last year. That was one time. Twice. Vashara corrected. Don't think I'm on your side. You forgot mine too. You're both ganging up on me. Obviously. They sat in comfortable silence. Three people who'd learned how to love in a way that had no name. Three people who'd chosen the hard path, and somehow made it work. I'm glad you said yes, Tessa said quietly. I'm glad we did this. Even though it hurt, even though it's hard, I'm glad. Me too, Vashara added. Ewan looked at his wooden bracelet, at the matching ones on their wrists. Three strands that had become one without losing their individual shapes. The bravest thing any of us did wasn't saying yes to the offer, he said. It was saying yes to each other, every day, even when it would have been easier to quit. Are you getting philosophical again? Tessa teased. Maybe. I liked you better when you just made bad jokes and couldn't remember birthdays. You still like me? Unfortunately. Vashara laughed. Tessa joined her. Ewan sat between two worlds and realized he didn't have to choose. He could just be. They could all just be. And that was enough. Not perfect. Never perfect. But real. And honest. And worth every impossible choice it took to get here. Some families are born. Others are built. And the strongest ones are the ones that refuse to fit any definition but their own. If this story moved you, if you felt the weight of impossible choices and the beauty of love that refuses to be simple, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Like this video to help others find this tale. Subscribe to our channel Orcbound Tales to see more stories about families that shouldn't work but do anyway. Because in the end, the world doesn't need perfect heroes. It needs broken people willing to fix each other. It needs families that choose love even when love doesn't look like what they expected. It needs stories that remind us that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is say yes to something impossible and figure out the details later. Thank you for being part of this journey. Until the next tale.